If I'm let's say, a painter, that I have every day a beautiful brush, a beautiful canvas, and a pigment, most likely tools are static. The tools are remain the same while the ideas changes. I think in the AI space, in the machine learning space, the data, the canvas, the context, like everything and anything is changing all the time. I felt that this ever changingness with the question of what is beyond reality is one of the reasons I love AI so much in my work. And it's not changing me, it's not replacing me, it is just a force that enhances my mental capacity.
This season, we focused specifically on builders, creators, those who are really utilizing Web3 as a toolkit for success and charting the future of our industry. I've been so happy that we've been able to talk to some amazing creators, artists like people like Jack Butcher. Our next guest is Refik Anadol, who is really also the top of the game, probably along with people, as one of the creative thinkers who's just challenging the world to say, I deserve a place on the pedestal of creativity and art. Refik is specifically working through the lens of AI and machine learning and data systems in ways that are really inspirational. He has a vast number of collectors. His work has sold in the millions. This is someone who we will probably look back years from now and say, he was one of the top people in the artistic space at this time and continues to push. He is opening his own museum called Dataland that we talk a little bit about. I had the pleasure of connecting with him many years ago in an experience that I tried to hire him and he was way too expensive for me even back then. So I'm glad I at least got to speak with him now and sort of hear about what makes him tick, and really appreciated this conversation. I think you will too. Stay tuned right after the break.
Midnight is a privacy-enhancing blockchain, introducing vital, programmable privacy and selective disclosure capabilities. It means dApps can allow users to control what information is revealed without putting sensitive data on-chain, allowing you to break free from the limitation of choosing between utility or privacy. We deserve more when it comes to privacy. Experience the next generation of blockchain that is private and inclusive by design. Break free with Midnight. Visit midnight.network/breakfree.
All right, we are back. I'm very excited to have this conversation with Refik Anadol. Refik is an amazing artist, thinker, creator in both traditional art spaces and in the Web3 space. We're going to talk all about that. Refik, I don't think you're going to remember when we first met. Maybe you do, but it was over 10 years ago at this point. I called your studio. I was doing a project with Samsung, and I wanted you to be a part of it. And you and I had a long conversation about how far away we're on the numbers, first of all. But also then I think we talked a lot about kind of creative code and art, what your studio is working on. So I'm really happy to actually have a more substantive conversation than that first time. Although we did miss you on the Samsung 837 project.
So good to connect again. So happy to be connected.
I'm going to tech date myself, but Refik, when we first met, I think it's like your studio was working in Touch Designer. There was only like a handful of people doing this type of work. And fast forward, and now generative and creative code is just really the kind of art du jour, especially for the computer age. Tell us about your journey. How did you get to now?
First of all, so great to be connected again. I will say 2008 for me, the year that I think I found myself truly and honestly connected to like becoming an artist. And that year was my last year as an undergrad. And I was very fortunate to work very closely with one of the most pioneer, I would say, we just recently lost a professor at Peter Weibel from very much, I will say, the first institution, Karlsruhe in ZKM. This museum is dedicated their collection to media artists. And that's when I learned about the media art, a media artist. And in that lecture series, I was also fortunate to start working with a software called Pure Data. And this software was very first time I was able to connect like my laptop to like a sensor. And it was the first time I realized that, okay, if I would like to explore art as a medium in general, and I was able to think data as a pigment, as a form of statement, form of creativity, form of material. And in that class, I think I coined the term data painting. In 2 months later, I was able to learn another software called VVVV, 4V. It is pre-touch designer, I would say, a very much early 90s, mid 90s, where very first time visual programming language coming up. I'm still using the software, an amazing team in the studio globally. We are programming lots of artworks together. Since that day, I think my practice with data, with code, with visual programming languages, 3D computer graphics, and eventually AI. But the idea of a studio, which was the reason I moved to Los Angeles to study at UCLA, to get my second degree, work with pioneers, Casey Rias and Christian Moller, who are, I think, super important in the field of media arts, become my teachers and mentors. And with that, I start our studio almost 10 years ago.
And at that time, Rafik, again, it was you. I think it was like Robert Hodgins, it was Theo Watson, Kyle McDonald. All these were sort of amazing creators. But really, what you guys were all creating as a collective was felt like very much magic, right? The thing that I think you brought to it that a lot of folks were wowed by, and I think if I remember correctly, it was a building in San Francisco that you had done.
Yeah,
Piece four was
2014. Yeah.
yes, exactly. It was all of the architectural work of understanding how to transform a physical space to make it feel like it was alive. Where did that idea come from? Because I feel like that's still resonant in your work today.
Yes. So 2012, I was very fortunate in my second MFA. I really deep dived this idea, data pigmentation and data sculpture concept. 2011, I did my first data sculpture. It was on a building facade, which I was dreaming a frame around the building, but was a big rejection. They said like, no, you can't make a frame this large. But since then, I think there's a frame in my work a lot. It's this idea of a reaction and a rejection and reaction turn into like, I guess, iconic statement. But I'm so happy that that movement, creative coding, creative programming, creative thinking with sensors and information, is fascinating. And that vibe, that compass never went away. What I felt so special about media art was always in the DNA of art thinking, but also media architecture. So the idea of adding media into architecture. So my fascination is not just beautiful media walls or screens and so forth, but the idea of a room, the building, the facade, the floor, the ceiling, the window, the architecture as a whole became a truly inspiration. I did many, many installations across the world by projection mapping, by different. But 2014, that example, very important. It's the first, our studio's first project, permanent installation in San Francisco, where many pioneers of technology still very important. That project, wow, 11 years was an important one. Still up and running, 11 years. So using a real-time data from the back-in-time Twitter and a real-time weather data and a real-time information of the building. That was to me very early examples. I am obsessed with two type of algorithms: fluid dynamics, optical flows, and because I think that 2008, if one day data becomes a pigment, it doesn't need to dry. It can just take any shape, any form, zero Newtonian concerns, and it's just free from the forms and any constraints of physical world. That I'm obsessed with fluid dynamics, and I found that it's possible to like plot the wind patterns and heart speed, the skin conductance, body temperature, brain signals. Pretty much anything and everything we can quantify has a chance to be represented in this universe. So that never stopped.
I feel a little bit like I get a little angry when people say, "Oh, well, someone like Rafik is just, he's the data is just generating something, and he just created the algorithm." Because I think about the idea that data is an input that helps drive the creation of your art, but light is an input, and the shape of a contour of a face is an input. All of it is something that is influencing any artist who's putting any work on digital paper or physical canvas, whatever it may be. Do you think that the idea of data painting is almost too small when you think of just the fact that people have been utilizing any input system, any output system they can find because artists just want to create?
Absolutely. That's a beautiful freedom of thinking. When I coined the term, I didn't like worry about any constraints and any like problems of biased artworks that stuck in maybe physical constraints of life. When I say stuck, not the creativity, but the shape, the form, the statement is one frozen concept. And I feel that this was, of course, before cinema, opera, theater, music, the idea of a frozen, like this is it moment to me didn't register to me in the age of computation. I grew up with computers. I saw the birth of internet and Web 1, 2, 3, quantum computation, and right now the AI revolution. I'm a generation of artists that I feel that I've witnessed the computation as like a form of meaning of creativity. So that's like what I'm trying to reflect back, I think. But on the other hand, with AI, I think things change much different. So data is something, sensors and things we can quantify, but there's also mission intelligence. So 10 years ago, 2015, I was very fortunate to invited to meet with incredible people at Google AMI program, the former also like a now DeepMind, I guess, revolutionary, brilliant minds at DeepMind. And I will say, staying in that trajectory of early exposures to AI, and I think training neural networks last 10 years, I feel like it's a very different approach to data and emission intelligence. So, sure, the works that can use any data, any statement, but the reason of that movement, the purpose of that color, and the shape that comes from it is the idea of that data painting and data sculptures. And I think it takes time for people to register this idea, and then for years and decades sometimes. It's normal. That's what it's, I think, contemporary artists. But I mean, at me for MoMA, when we felt that 3 million people coming to MoMA in 200 years, it's the first time the museum's biggest audience with a 38 minutes audience experience with a permanent first AI piece in the collection. I felt that that is just gone. I don't see that anymore. After that, I mean, pre MoMA, after, I mean, post MoMA, I feel like the world, for me, from an artist point of view, I think we have a different perspective.
All right, before we get into AI, I do want to ask one other question about kind of the origin story, which is I've seen again. I'm a fan of the industry and specifically of creative code. There seems to be a tremendous amount of creativity from artists who are Turkish. I think of yourself. I think of Memo and some of the work that he did. Is there something about like Turkey that has just unleashed this creativity for so many artists who want to express through code?
That's a great question. I think, I mean, if I can talk for my personal reason that I felt. So in 2011, when I did my first data sculpture in Istanbul, I felt that I already reached the capacity of the cultural push for the museum. And I'll be super happy to share. I did lots of exhibitions last 9 years in Turkey, and I was able to like create beautiful works and push the boundaries without any problems. So I had always this, I don't know, but societal positive reaction from the audience, a beautiful motivation. I just opened a show yesterday. I couldn't go to the Aegean side of Turkey, Izmir. I received these beautiful messages, hundreds of like. There's this very beautiful connection to the form of art that pushes the boundaries. I think first of all, the audience in Turkey, I would say receptive, but also I would not say education system is the reason, but the open-mindedness of the multiple layers of culture. For me, for example, when I grew up in Istanbul, I born in Istanbul. To me, the city is an incredible inspiration, not necessarily because of just basic history of the city, but geolocation of it, like being connected with east and west, and knowing that that connection through, to me, physical and virtual, or I mean past and future, the city, I think, clicks in a way that makes you wonder in this new realm of real. I don't know how to explain that feeling, but city is so inspiring, and the people, I think, receive this positively and gives you back this motivation. This beautiful feedback loop is, I think, create this, communities. So, I mean, economically, maybe Turkey is not in the right position to push forward, but doesn't mean that people like stop. Constraints doesn't stop. Possibility still keeps going, and dreaming doesn't stop because of economy, because of cultural shifts. This creates a resilient mindsets. You want to push forward more. I grew up with a family of teachers. I am not coming from a wealthy family, but I have a deep appreciation of learning to learn so early ages. And that also boosts being a resilient and push forward that you have to learn. And there is no like, shortcuts. There is no like networks or fancy things. You just have to do it. And I think that's an incredible teaching of the culture that I believe triggering lots of things.
I would actually argue, in fact, that constraint creates better art, right? The idea of not having everything accessible to you makes you have to be creative and think outside.
100%. I completely agree with you.
So when we look at a lot of the artwork recently, and you mentioned the MoMA piece, you talk about it through the lens of AI. You mentioned being interested in fluid dynamics and kind of the sort of patterns. And again, creative code is a wealth of opportunity within that ecosystem fueled by data. What exactly makes it artificial intelligence in the way that you're utilizing AI in your work?
So 2015-16 February, that's a very important date to me. I was extremely grateful that I was the first artist in resident in the Google's AMI program. And this program is super special because, again, 10 years ago, exposing to like machine learning algorithms, it's a fascinating like feeling. And I was fortunate with our curator Vasif Kortun. He donated 1.7 million documents, cultural documents, to imagine the archive dreaming, this concept, the idea of archive where data exists, libraries exist, where we learn the truth or the past to generate our future and contextualize our wisdom and, I guess, information of life. The concept was so exciting to start with. But as an artist, my ultimate question is truly and honestly challenging questions that I believe that makes work more interesting and inspiring and motivating. One of my question is, what is beyond reality? And this question to me feels so powerful, but cannot be explored without just, um, any other technological tools. I felt that AI is a fundamentally the one of the best technology to ask this question. And then I got excited about, okay, but if a machine can learn, again, 10 years ago, can it dream? Can it hallucinate? Can it have a fantasy? I felt that that's where the art happens. If a machine learning algorithm mimic the reality or analyze some bunch of data and create some reasoning and so forth, I felt that that's a very predictable function of a system that not necessarily create the art unless there is some super deep reasoning and meaning and enforced perspectives. Sure, then yes. But in the core idea of itself, I felt that there is no art here. I felt that art happens when that system broken, changed, reutilized, remade, like just I think artists create their own systems and thinkings and algorithms. So thinking brush concept. So that's where that's where I felt connected with the idea of if a machine can dream. And then what are the memories of this machine and what type of memories I can load in these like possibilities, which led me to only but only use our own data, collect our own data, and train our own models. So now this is a very fascinating 10 years looking at these patterns of training models across the world, from image diffusion models to sound models to text models. Even we are experimenting with like a small large language models. It's a fascinating path that I felt this 10 years felt like 100 years. In a traditional context, if I'm a, let's say, a painter that I have every day a beautiful brush, a beautiful canvas, and a pigment, most likely tools are static. The tools are remain the same while the ideas changes. I think in the AI space, in the machine learning space, the data, the canvas, the context, like everything and anything is changing all the time. I felt that this ever changingness with the question of what is beyond reality is one of the reasons I love AI so much in my work. And it's not changing me, it's not replacing me, it is just a force that enhances my mental capacity.
I asked the same question, I think, or a similar question to Sam Spratt and to Beeple about the idea of at some point, if the AI can make a relatively authentic Rafik piece without a lot of Rafik input, or maybe your partner presses a button that says make another Rafik, is that still a Rafik piece, right? If it's trained on it, how much is it once the models are really good? How much of yourself are you giving away to it?
Yeah. So first of all, before that, I have a human copycats number one. Before AI, like even I have right now, like people like literally getting some very similar work without knowing. I mean that exists, right? But it's okay. It's I think the form of art that inspires people. I get it. But if you think about AI as a mean of creative force, if I think about the idea of machine mimic my mental state or life experience that really with me go through the life as an experience, I have a different take on that because life is the input of life as in general, contextually, conceptually, is the input of an artist that the outcomes come from. Now, if the AI has the same similar sensorial inputs and from an emotional to spiritual spectrum of like contextualizing of life, that eventually becomes a form of art that can decide that can be an interesting time to think about. If it's super whatever intelligence and ages, whatever the name will put on this next genre of intelligence of this next phase of AI's journey, I am not so against of it. If I have as a partner, as a co-creator, I do believe that the future has to be human machine collaborations. I feel like if AI exists and if AI means anything and everything, it has to be for anyone and everyone. Eventually, for me, for anyone else, And I feel that in that dialogue, if it's done ethically and if it doesn't harm nature, I feel that 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 world is a different world than what we are thinking. And in that world, I see AI as a co-creator, as a friend, as a colleague, as a team member, not as replacing me, but it is an absolutely a form of creative force. When we collect the MoMA piece, we have been discussing this a lot. For example, it's not a normal thing for a museum to collect an AI artwork. It's like a living with microphones and cameras and weather data, a living system, right? It's a very hard. Like time with Guggenheim Bilbao, you have an artwork running in the cloud in real time, every moment of dreaming new worlds. I mean, these are very complex form of creativity that is not like just a beautiful screen piece or like a humble computer. It's a very complex systems. Now, the artwork at Guggenheim Bilbao, which in the collection of the museum, can evolve over time. But I see myself as an author, as a co-creator there. Sure, in 100 years, the cloud maybe change, maybe just another like a GPU clusters or quantum computation may arrive. But as an artist, I think the idea still remains, but probably the technology can just evolve. That's how I see that. And I think it has to be freedom of thinking, free from the canvas, free from the like screens. The idea should just remain as independent as it can be.
Let me challenge this through the lens of some people, some of the skeptics, right, who think about this from a humanity perspective, right? So Jeffrey Hinton has talked about the idea that the Industrial Revolution changed the human body because we didn't need our muscles in the same way. A lot of people have looked at the internet as changing how we have memory and our referential capacity. Recently, there's a study, I think it was MIT, I could be wrong, about how utilizing AI reduces our cognitive load, right? And so therefore could be a precursor to things like dementia or Alzheimer's because we're just not using our brains as much. So technology changes the physical form. So I'm wondering, how does technology change the artist? Not in the way I think you're using it the right way. This is a helper that you're saying, do the things I need, and maybe you can do things I can't. But there's others out there, as we all know, who are just saying, make me a piece of art that looks like Rafik's. I'm going to try to sell it somewhere. And it's not just the worry of derivative. To me, it's actually the worry of what is it doing to creativity as a whole.
Very, very good question. So, the AI's revolution for humanity from neuroscientific, emotional, spiritual, political is an absolutely very, very hard to predict world. But what I know that we will be 100% seeing is, as a teacher teaching for 10 years, I can say that also from a pedagogical context, there's a desire for shortcutting, a desire for laziness, desire for finding quick way of finding a solution without truly and honestly deeply thinking the context of it. This thing that I mentioned was always, I think, in the DNA of humanity. So it's not something new. Now, it's a new learning for humanity. We never have a technology had a reasoning capacity or intelligence capacity. We never have a superior like neural networks that can do this before. When it comes to these deep questions, I need to come back to people that I have a lots of respect and love, Yavanaba people. They are one of my mentors living in Amazonia without any technology we have, but a technology they have, which is called nature. I always go back to the like people who I have a respect and love, how they handle the growth of humanity. Because we are so biased, we are so immersed every single day. We are every day exposed this like world that we every day that is evolving in a speed of light that I do not believe we have a time to think, to perceive, to honest and openly ask questions. I found these answers mostly in my deep conversations with my mentors, who believes that nature is also AI, but we just egocentrically jump to a level and forget that and go somewhere and hopefully we'll remember again. And one of the reasons we designed large nature model as a response, as a reaction, is this. So I think AI models has to be trained with these ideas, with this vision of like the impact on pedagogy, impact on neuroscientific context, impact on spirituality. I do not believe there's a time at the moment on the hands of tech giants to really and honestly deep dive this question you have.
Hmm.
For me as a teacher, as a person opening an AI museum, we have it. Humbly, we apply these systems in a way. As a teacher, I'm trying to find a tool that doesn't necessarily create a lazy interaction. I'm trying to create a system that acts as know a lot, but not necessarily make you lazy to reach a level because you are rushing for something personal. I totally agree that the more shortcutting we have neuroscientifically in the learning and reasoning and many others, the more most likely has a chance of other issues we have no idea. The same maybe AI will solve the problems of Alzheimer's and dementia, but of course we don't know what the others may pop up. So it's this incredible mirror situation. I feel like I always give the same example personally for me. I see AI as a mirror. It's a perfect mirror for humanity. It will reflect who we are. But biological problems, neurological problems, that will be a whole new evolution journey.
You mentioned your museum. I know Dataland is a very ambitious project,
Yes.
and I believe it's sort of you creating your own museum where you have spent a lot of your time showing in others. So yeah, tell us about why that project is so important to you, and what do you think it brings to the world?
I think I was absolutely blown away and also so happy to say that in the pandemic, unfortunately, when we were in a very challenging part, the Web3 space, the communities like getting together in the virtual world, that was a fascinating time that I saw a community that exists that I didn't know before. So personally, I learned a lot at that time. On the other hand, I'm so grateful that we did many exhibitions around the world, like MoMA, Guggenheim, Pompidou, NGV, Serpentine Galleries. I mean, these are one of the best museums in the world. These are one of the best institutions in the world. But the medium I am using personally, that using like computation and like complex like display technologies and sensors and cloud computation, I found that it's very, very hard to bring these mediums to the traditional museums. But on the other hand, the MoMA's message in 2 years ago saying that that's a form of art, that is accepted, that's a part of the art canon. But I also felt that there are many artists like me practicing in the field. And that's when I felt that in almost 1.5 years ago that what will happen if this medium becomes a museum? And I felt that, of course, people are trying to say digital art and like saying digital museums and so forth. But truly and honestly, from the media architecture, from the AI research, from the sensors, from the AI training, and and the institution collect the art, education and learning, we couldn't find any place for that. So we thought that maybe this is a chance for us to attempt a place where we can go and see the best example of this form of art, where we can also collect this form of art, where we can also learn a truly learning systems, artist residencies, an abundance of creativity in that kind of a new space where things are done exceptionally high quality without compromising due to some other challenges. As an artist, I was so fortunate to get my dreams happen. And I know that feeling very well. When an artist's dream happens, that motivation, that moment in life is everything. And I know that very well from my heart that this has to scale. This has to go to anyone and everyone in this field of creativity. That's a feeling from my heart. And to make this happen, we need an institution. We need a place, a new form of artistic like exploration, a new form of community that truly and honestly understand that feeling and gives back to society, show the world how this form can be art form can be done, and hopefully achieve historical messages across centuries. I believe that in these 10 years, we learn a lot in this field. We have a lot of experiences, and we want to bring them together physically in one manifestation. Hopefully, goes beyond that. So, lots of dreams inside one name, but I believe we have enough motivation and support and energy to turn this into a reality, and that's the excitement.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think there's something so interesting about you've had such great success in this, and how to bring other artists in that can learn from you and others and your successes to create a really a movement. I think around code-based work, AI-based work is necessary as both a teacher and an artist yourself. You are shown in very traditional art formats. You're shown in very Web3 formats. You are able to conduct business a lot in Ethereum as much as you probably are in straight cash. What is crypto to you beyond a medium? What is the blockchain for you beyond it? Are you interested in the nuances of the technology itself? Is it about the censorship resistance, the freedom? What is it that excites you?
I think three sides of it. I think that makes me absolutely so joyful and inspired and motivated. Of course, number one, in the pandemic, I'm so honored and so grateful that we have this beautiful society of community of people around our work, our collectors. We did a gorgeous, I would say, experimentations in blockchain with incredible community and created a lot of value around our work. Again, I'm coming from an independent perspective. I don't have a gallery representation. I'm not coming from a traditional, like conventional art school. I'm not a form of the pet of that person. So, like Beeple and Puck and many other wonderful friends, we are in this digital society where we have been exploring our ideas and thinking. So, to me, blockchain and the Web3 space was a fascinating place where this manifestation happened. Turn to a value, turn to a community, turn to an inspiration. On the other hand, the freedom of creativity, meaning that without like attached like third parties or like gatekeepings and other like form of filters of society, it's just a rebellious way of like creating, and regardless of like the bias of the world. And that's a fascinating. And the third thing, of course, which I believe, programming and creating exciting concepts like the blockchain as a canvas. I feel like our latest project, Biome Lumina, which is like a dreaming on the cloud and on the chain, and be able to like inference with your tokens as a mean of like personas. To me, it is like creativity in the medium itself is so inspiring, and I think again, as a canvas inspiring, as a society, as a community is inspiring, as a financial model inspiring, because it all together to me creates a meaning. Ups and downs, 100%. Problems, sure. But to me, I always see as a human, I see the bright side of the world, and I'm still seeing the bright side of the world. And there's so much things to do in the space.
I love it. I only have two more questions, Rafik. I don't want to keep you too long. First is this crypto art is a movement, digital art is a movement. Do you think we reach a point where AI itself creates a cultural movement on its own without human initiation?
The interesting question, because I have been in deep dialogues with my collectors, with auction houses, which are the valuation of the world, both the collectors and the auction house. So here's the thing. The good news is I don't meet anyone that wants to replace artists. I didn't meet any cultural leader, technology leader wants to change artists. So that's, I hope, a good news. I didn't meet anyone. So I cannot make up a story. I cannot paranoiacally like or hysterically talk about it. I don't know anyone I met that says, oh, we don't need artists. So that's the good news, I guess. The other challenge I can see, if AI has a very strong reasoning of creating a system and a culture that create its own value systems, that where the things start like appearing, let's say a large language model system or some super intelligent systems have its own marketplace, does its own like ecosystems. There's like a world of like AI create a commissioning logic that because it's so successful by helping humanity that gets back something back, and that economy creates a new system. These are fascinating new systems to think about it, but they are not replacing us. They are creating a whole new reality. And I understand that it's a high chance, of course, if the AI system have its reasoning that is almost superior to like, consciousness, for sure there can be some new systems emerging, new societies emerging. But I don't know what does it mean for the art itself yet. Meaning, are the collectors becoming the collectors of AI's intelligence and creativity, where they create new value systems? Is the concern? Maybe. And that concern can be how to tackle with that? Creativity. How do we know that may happen? Human instincts. How do we be sure that we are not there? Imagination. I always come back to the same places, even the basic brainstorming like this always gives me the same hope. I believe art is humanity's capacity of imagination. And I do believe this from my heart. And I can understand the hysteria, concerns, and paranoias that may happen, which we need to, because it's a powerful force called AI. But I also believe that seeing the positive side of these systems applying the mindset of what can I do with that and deep think about these possibilities and be ready for it is very important. I always say the same thing. The future we are going needs a new name. I am calling it generative reality. I do believe that we are creating everyday new realities. It's not AR, VR, XR. It's completely different way of thinking of life. The systems are creating realities, and also we will question what is creativity. So if we're all ready for questioning what is reality and what is creativity, and if we have a resilience of minds and powerful thinking and intellectual depth that we can question these fields, I believe we are resilient beings as called humanity to tackle with whatever can come next.
You talked about creating realities. So, if I handed you the data set of all humanity in the year of 2025, what do you think that looks like?
We are in a very challenging world. We have wars, we have separations, we have conflicts. The world is unfortunately not in the most happy place for majority of the world. So my hope as an artist, I always say the same thing that I'm always looking for inspiration, joy, and hope in my work. Since my first interaction with the computation to the moment right now, I never changed my compass. And I still feel that how to find those three distinct humanities joy of life and hope and the inspiration that I hope we need. And I believe that's possible to find again. And I will absolutely challenge myself to find the language of humanity. At the moment, we have borders, we have separations, we have different cultures, which I love and respect. But at the meantime, we know that we are one, but we just couldn't properly prove it yet. Perhaps AI is one of those tools that allow us to just show us the language of humanity. It's from my heart that I will love to invent, find a way to make the invisible visible around that.
All right, final question. Who's the artist that pops into your mind that inspires you most?
I will definitely have multiples.
You
One
get
of the art,
one. You get one, Rafik.
James Turrell, and truly hero, and then I think truly started the light and space movement that I inspired, and I felt that what I'm trying to do with data and AI and architecture, I try to find that meaning of light and space. So deep respect to his work.
There are a few artists who might be more inspirational than James Turrell. So great pick there. All right, Rafik, thank you for spending so much time with us today. Really appreciate it. Hope to see you again.
Thank you so much.